So we all know, I guess, that data assets are beyond rows of columns. You have tables, views, databases, schemas, explores, metrics, requests, issues, and all of them have their own unique metadata. On one hand, you have the technical metadata, which is rows, columns. Then you have the human metadata, which the data consumers or the business folks know about that data asset. Then you have the producer metadata, which people who are actually generating these assets in their Airflow pipelines, in their DAGs, in their DBTs, they know about this, right? And together they create that asset 360 or data asset. And what happens is it creates that data asset sprawl. And that sprawl is a black box, and no one knows where do these assets even exist. So on that note, let's skip to my favorite part, which is just showing you the Atlan workspace. So assume this is day 0, and you're just getting started with Atlan. So the first step is to actually bring these assets. So let's get started. Let's create a new workflow. What you see right now is a marketplace for all these packages where you can connect to your favorite tooling, your data stores, your BI tooling, your enrichment stores, your DBTs, your Fivetrans, and bring those assets from these sources. And these are completely DIY. And so you don't need to be a technical engineer to actually set this up. So I just, for the sake of this demo, we'll scan through what Snowflake looks like. So I just selected Snowflake. It gives me a complete DIY experiences, 3-step process. You can bring in your credentials, test some authentication, let Atlan know what metadata assets you want to bring in, and you are done. In case you still struggle to set this up, it's backed by some amazing Atlan docs, which are very interactive as well. So you can just check it out. Again, it helps you cater through every step of the process as well. Similarly, apart from Snowflake, you can set up your BI tooling, you can set up your orchestration tooling, and bring all metadata from there. Once that's set up, let's go to the next step. What happens? So assume we've had this set up. I've just opened up the Atlan search bar. I found an asset which looks like verified. Let me just jump to that asset. Now, what you see on the screen right now is what we call an asset profile. Now, for a quick reference for the diverse audience that we have today, this could be a Salesforce account profile where you have all information about your Salesforce account. Or for engineers, this could be the GitHub repo where you have code, but you have readmes, you have documentation, you have issues, you have everything there. Or this might be a LinkedIn, similar to your LinkedIn profile, where it covers the 360 information about your professional journey. So once you bring this metadata from all these sources, it creates this asset 360 profile. And I'll take you through parts of it one by one. So on one hand, you have the technical metadata, which is the rows, the columns, the descriptions that might be available. You have the governance metadata, which is the business terminologies or the concepts, your owners, who are the actual people that are owning it, classifications, and certifications, so that you know that this data is trusted, and the data consumers, when they land on this asset, they know that this is something it's verified by the team. So this talks about metadata, right? But we talked about diversity, which means that it changes for different assets. So let's now move to maybe some other asset. So maybe let's go to a dashboard. And as soon as if you land on dashboard, if you see the metadata evolves, you have now views coming, how many times these have been viewed. You have readmes that have been built in. You have different folder structure, hierarchies that are available for BI. Now, for this, let's move back to the table asset. Now, let's look on the right top. There are different actions that you can take, and it all depends on what personas you are coming from. One, you can copy this link. And this is my favorite part, favorite action on this asset profile. Data assets were never referenceable because they never had a link. You only get to know schema name, database name. They never had a URL. What this does, it creates an asset URL. So you can share this internally, reference an asset in your docs or in your Jira tickets, and this becomes a URL which makes a reference to all your assets in your ecosystem, right? if you're lazy and you use Slack, you can just send this out and share it in your Slack channel. So let's try doing that. So as soon as it does that, let's switch to a Slack channel. Now, this is a Slack channel. As soon as and I'm sure all of you in your teams also have similar Slack channels, you'll find that asset shared and all the metadata that was available on Atlan is also now unfurled and available on Slack. And let's give a big right tick. Apart from that, you also get to see other kind of assets that are available. You get to see resources. This could be links, documentation assets that are sitting in your documentation tooling, like Confluence, your PPTs, your Miro boards, your PDF files. You can look at the queries that are attached to this. So this could be a query that is linked to this. You can see all your Jira issues, which are linked to this. And if you want to extend, you can even extend this and bring your quality tooling, quality metadata, operational metadata, and create that asset 360 we were talking about when we just get started. So apart from metadata, once we scan and when you run these packages, the other thing we create is we create relationships between these assets. And one use case of creating these relationships is Lineage. So the next part, let's jump to this Lineage tab. What you see here is this is the asset we are in. And you see on one hand, this is coming from an upstream table in Stuck-out orders. And on the downstream, this is connected to a BI Explorer, which is on Looker. Now, but if you see a big tick, which means that there is further lineage upstream that this is coming in from. And as soon as you click that, now suddenly you see this is coming from a transactional system in Stuck-out orders, which might be in Postgres. So if I just zoom out, what this creates is it creates that end-to-end lineage from your transactional system to your analytical, the first layer, this may be the raw layer, your final layer, this could be the end user layer, the analytics layer, which also connects to then BI. So the next time you want to do a root cause analysis, why that dashboard number was wrong, you don't need to go to the terrace. You can just come here and figure out what dashboards, what's actually broken. And not only that, you can look at right at the column level. So if I click that department, I could easily see where exactly these columns are getting derived from. And beyond this, we also bring the operational metadata. So if I click this big Fivetran logo and I open this sidebar, you also get to see actually the operational pipeline, which is actually bringing this. So in case you have access to Fivetran, this will actually open up the operational actual pipeline, which is actually running this and bringing this data from Postgres to Snowflake. Now we've created Asset 360. We've leveraged the relationships to create Lineage. Now, how do we reuse some of this work that has already been done automatically? So one of the things you can do is, let's click this eval set column. So one of the things we do is, you can quickly add, like, let's say, suppose this was PII and you want to classify this column right at your transactional database. As soon as you click this, what happens is, we'll be able to propagate this across your analytical stacks. So if you've marked once that your eval set is a PII, this means that irrespective of downstream where it gets used, it'll always be marked PII. And we'll talk about in some of the next part of the demos of how you can actually leverage some of these tags to create governance controls on Atlan. Let's try opening up some more assets. Now, the other thing if you see when I clicked this column that popped up was this suggestion. This is a favorite Trident bot, what we call it internally, where we give users a metadata nudge, where because we know that this column there's already a description that was set somewhere in maybe the development environment or maybe some other analytical layer, we're able to suggest some of these descriptions. So we're able to reuse some of the existing metadata that already exist in the asset landscape and create and nudge these suggestions. So let's quickly just do an apply. And we've just saved some time for our colleagues when next time they look at these columns. So we've looked at bringing the metadata, we've looked at Asset 360, we've looked at relationships, and we've looked at how do we reuse it. And once you set up all of this for all your connectors, you'll be able to create this powered discovery experience from a data consumption. It has all your connectors, all the metadata, and you can filter through, consume all of that, and discover and consume the asset that you're looking for. Now, one of the common questions that always comes up as soon as data teams get started is when they look at this. They're like, okay, there are 58,000 assets, and we was talking about data sprawl, right? And the first question they start asking each other, why do we have so many assets? And so, which is what we've recently rolled out, like a metadata analytics center, where you can start at an aggregate level, start looking at your assets. So if I select Snowflake, you can quickly see how many assets are there, how many are currently verified, what's the classification looks like. You can look at column, how many PII classification, how many columns exist which are PII tagged, how many are sensitive, of how many are maybe third-party owned. You can start looking at this aggregate information. So on that note, let's get back to our slides. So quickly summarizing of what we saw just right now. We saw a DIY setup experience to bring all your metadata and create rich relationships. We saw an Asset 360 profile, similar to what GitHub repo or your account profiles are. We saw a native asset experience. Irrespective of the diversity, every asset has a different experience. We saw an end-to-end lineage, which is right from your relational, transactional, to analytical, to BI, with rich operational metadata. And once you create this foundational value, you're able to start seeing values such as propagation, and you can reuse some of the existing metadata to power knowledge across your data sprawl.